Chris Yandex, CYInterview, covering Las Vegas and the world. If you have not already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with everything we have going on here at CYInterview in Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world. Please hit that subscribe button below. Please like this video, share it with your friends. Anyone who watches our videos, we greatly appreciate it. CYInterview would like to send its condolences to the family and friends of baseball legend Pete Rose, who died yesterday at the age of 83. A couple months ago, I did a video on the new, at the time, HBO Max's series that they did on Pete Rose called Charlie Hustle and the Matter of Pete Rose. That was released. It was a 4-hour series on Pete Rose's life today that was recorded, I believe, in the last 2 years and showed what he was up to and his desire to still be in baseball's Hall of Fame. So I think the reason that people love the Pete Rose story so much is they see one of the greatest guys to ever play baseball. He really was Charlie Hustle. He wanted to win every game. He wanted to get every hit. He cared about every play that was going on. Of course, the famous, slide into home plate during the All-Star game. A lot of things can be said about Pete Rose, but he was definitely a guy who wanted to be a winner, and he was beyond competitive. I think my video of a couple months ago really sums it up, and I'm going to play that video again for you in a couple of minutes, but just a couple of side notes about Pete Rose, I think, is the reason people are so fascinated by his story is they can't imagine a guy who is one of the greatest in his sport betting on his own baseball team while he's the manager of that team. And, people would say, well, isn't it enough already? And I think the reason that Pete Rose never got into the Hall of Fame was because he didn't come out earlier and apologize for betting on baseball, admitting to betting on baseball. And if he had done that and did things to show his understanding of what he did, I think he would have ended up in the Hall of Fame. Now, what's interesting to note, at the end of the 4-part series that you can now see on HBO Max, you'll see that Pete Rose talks about how he finally gave up betting and gambling at the age of 81. And it's better to have growth than never have growth. So that was definitely a great thing. But I think the reality is that for so many people, it's just like he lied for so many years about not betting on baseball. And I think that's really why he didn't end up in the Hall of Fame, among maybe a couple of other reasons. But I think that we look back now here at the history of Pete Rose. He has a lot of Las Vegas connections. For many years, like Mike Tyson, he signed autographs at a variety of different Las Vegas venues, resorts, and he was there, and people had an opportunity. They could get bats and baseballs and photos signed by him for different prices. And he said he made millions of dollars signing autographs in Las Vegas. And the reason he came to Las Vegas was because he knew that tourists had money. They want to meet stars. It's a glamorous life here. So we're now going to replay that commentary from a couple months ago. I think it's a very good explanation on the Pete Rose story itself. Pete Rose, Mr. Charlie Hustle of the Cincinnati Reds, died yesterday at the age of 83. You can now watch my video on his recent new HBO Max series, which is worth watching. 4 hours to really understand his story. You can watch my commentary from 2 months ago, and that is Orange the CYInterview Cat. I'm Chris Yandex for CYInterview. If you have not already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button below. And here's that commentary from a couple months ago. Thank you. Okay, so whether you're new here or you're returning, today's topic is going to be, we're going to talk about the new Pete Rose documentary series that was just released on Max, formerly HBO Max, called Charlie Hustle and the Matter of Pete Rose. It's a 4-part series focusing on Pete Rose's life today and his desire to continue to be included in baseball's Hall of Fame. So I just want to break down some of the highlights from the documentary. I watched the entire 4 hours. So to begin with, one of the early segments in the documentary is from legendary sports broadcaster Al Michaels, and he sums it up very well, I think, that the Pete Rose story is not tragic. it is sad. It absolutely is sad because a lot of the choices that Pete made are why he's not in the Hall of Fame today. And had he made a couple of better choices and not lied for so long, he probably would be in today's Baseball Hall of Fame. But if that were the case, then there wouldn't be a documentary series and there wouldn't continue to maybe be all this interest around him because of all his accomplishments. All of the hits that he was able to make, of course, breaking Ty Cobb's record and all of those things. So I want to take it to the part of the documentary that really focuses on why the documentary exists. Of course, I want to first make a disclaimer. Of course, we're here in Las Vegas. The majority of people who come to Las Vegas, I believe, they gamble for fun. They bring a couple $100, they gamble at the blackjack table, they put a bet on their favorite sports team to win the Super Bowl or the World Series. It's not a serious thing for them. It's just a holiday thing. They've got a little entertainment budget. They go home and they don't gamble. But then there are people like Pete Rose who, there is a desire, there is a need, there is this adrenaline rush, there is this feeling of potentially being an action junkie where you just have to bet at all costs. And Pete reflects early on in the documentary about how, early on in his baseball career, he only bet horses, but he never bet sports. But then the reality is there was one day he came to the conclusion that, he was betting other sports like football and basketball. And then he decided that the only thing he really knew about was the game that he played was baseball. Well, that's where the problems begin. And as you know, for many, many years, Pete Rose lied to the public, saying that he never bet on baseball until he came out in the early 2000s with a tell-all book where he finally did admit that to Charlie Gibson that, yep, I did bet on baseball and I shouldn't have bet on baseball, but he finally did admit it after all of those years. And that's the problem of why Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame, among other reasons, is that he just has chosen to, continue to make excuses for his behavior in certain regards, and that's going to be the problem long term. You know what I'm saying? And that, hopefully maybe one day the Baseball Hall of Fame will let him in. But the reality is this, what should end up happening, if anything. He should not be allowed to have any job or any position in Major League Baseball because he bet on baseball while he was the manager of the Reds. That's number one, my opinion. But number two, you should just put him in the Hall of Fame and be done with it. And then the story would be over. The man is over 80 years old. There's no denying that he has, had punishment for what he did. The reality of what it comes down to is at the end of the documentary, you finally learn that he says that when it was recorded 6 months prior, that he finally gave up sports betting after all those years in his 80s. And hopefully he has. And one of the interesting parts about the documentary as we focus on Las Vegas is that for many years, Pete Rose signed autographs here in Las Vegas. And I don't know if he still does, but he might make appearances from time to time. But here's the thing that Pete will say about that. The reason he chose Las Vegas was not because of his gambling, his desire to gamble. He says it's because people come to Las Vegas, they're on vacation, they want to meet stars, and they have money. And he says that he made over $3 million a year one year signing these autographs for people. He can sign them, he signs to baseball. I'm sorry that I bet on baseball. That's a very popular one, supposedly. The reality of what it comes down to is that you really get to see, the great athlete, but you also get to see how demons and vices can ruin a person. And again, there's nothing wrong with healthy moderation in life, with the things that you want to pursue. But the reality is that Pete Rose, unfortunately, felt the need to bet when he was the Reds manager. And even though he bet on the Reds, he could have made decisions, whether it be replace players, take players in and out of games, change pitchers, that could have affected those players' lives, potentially. Maybe if he keeps them in too long, maybe a pitcher could have potentially got injured, or maybe they shouldn't be pitching 3 nights in a row, but he wanted them in there because he had a bet on them. All of those outcomes are possible. And so the reality of what it comes down to is Pete Rose absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He does not deserve to have any job in Major League Baseball. But this documentary really gives you an updated view of the recent years of what's been going on in Pete's life. And it's really interesting, again, if you love sports and you love historic sports. But the reality is that Pete is a cautionary tale in life that if you let a vice ruin your life, run your life, it will ruin your life. And so we can all learn from him in that regard. You know, there's no denying that his accomplishments on the field were extraordinary. There's no denying all of those things. But the reality of what it comes down to is that unfortunately, you know, he let a vice get the best of him. And most people can, you know, again, gamble a couple $100 here in Las Vegas or have fun. Sometimes you win. Hope you win. I hope you all win. But the reality of what it comes down to is that, you know, for most people, it's not a problem. And that's statistically true. So, but, you know, if you want, go watch Charlie Hustle and The Matter of Pete Rose. It is worth watching. There's no denying that. But, you know, do you want to see Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame? I absolutely do, but you shouldn't be working in baseball. It's as simple as that. I'm Christianic for CY Interview. If you have any thoughts or comments, please leave them below, and I will see you in the next video.